On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, March has gone not so well for your Toronto Raptors. They're 1-9, and they've put together some truly wretched stats. Today on the show, we laugh and commiserate over some of the most hilarious and upsetting Toronto Raptors stats from the last 3 weeks.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, March 22nd. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Very Bad website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Lots of great March Madness talk going on, lots of draft stuff and movie talk and all sorts of things not talking about your currently spiraling Toronto Raptors. It's a great place to come hang out with Raptors fan sickos just like you, though. So please join us. It's free. Link in the description. Come on in. We would love to have you be part of our listener community over there on the Discord. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Much appreciated when you support the show. However it is you support the show. We're on YouTube as well. You can go and subscribe to the channel, hit the little notification bell, and get a heads up every single time the show is about to go live via push notification that says, hey, stop what you're doing right now. Sean's talking about a very compelling basketball team. So go ahead and do all that. Thanks so much in advance for supporting the show. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba. Use the code all lowercase lockedonnba for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, let's get rolling here on the show today, where I have a fun exercise planned. Not fun for me because I spent the entire morning before recording combing through, cleaning the glass, Basketball Reference, NBA.com, looking for some of the most grim and upsetting and frankly hilarious stats the Toronto Raptors have procured for themselves over the course of the last 3 weeks since Scottie Barnes went down. Of course, it's been just 3 weeks to the day since he broke his hand against the Warriors. It feels like it has been much, much longer than that. In that time, your Raptors are 1-9, and hey, they've been just like really, really bad at a lot of stuff. And so I thought it would be fun just to sort of like illuminate just how bad things have been, have some fun with it, laugh at our misfortune as fans watching this team, and just kind of highlight some of the things that have gone just exceedingly wrong for the Toronto Raptors this month as a bit of a light, fun palate cleanser going into your weekend. Of course, all these numbers are going to get worse tonight as the Raptors host the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are really, really good and probably going to absolutely steamroll the Raptors. And, that'll be its own sort of fun. Jalen Williams is fun. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is incredible. We know this. Chet Holmgren is going to have himself a day, one would assume. There will be, reasons to watch and be interested, outside of the Toronto Raptors side of things. And I hope you do enjoy that. But before the numbers get even more out of hand, let's dive in, shall we? I got 3 numbers to kind of dig into. We'll get into some of the things the Raptors are dead last in over the course of the last month. We'll get into the Raptors, not being good at the one thing they're supposed to be really good at anymore as well. But I want to start here with the starting lineup/starting lineups. Of course, it's been a rocky month for the Raptors in the starting lineup department. Guys in and out. Scottie Barnes was in the starting lineup to begin this month and then got hurt, and we saw him for a half in this month, and it was the best half of basketball the Toronto Raptors have played in the entire month of March. And so, it's all been downhill since that pretty spirited first half against the Warriors. After that, the Raptors have used a handful of different starting lineups, and the one they've used the most has had like numbers and sort of results that are a little mind-breaking a little bit. The Toronto Raptors' most used starting lineup in the month of March is Immanuel Quickley alongside Gary Trent Jr., Ochai Agbaji, Grady Dick, Kelly Olynyk. They played 50 minutes this month, the most used lineup for the Toronto Raptors in the month of March. And 6 times it started over the course of the last 10 games as the Raptors have gone 1-9 in this month. This lineup, Quickley, Trent, Agbaji, Dick, Olynyk, has the worst net rating in the entire NBA among the 493 lineups that have played 50 minutes or more this season. 493 lineups. That is more lineups than there are players in the NBA. And the Toronto Raptors starting lineup this month of Quickley, Trent, Agbaji, Dick, Olynyk, minus 49.7 net rating, getting absolutely demolished. They are a minus 49 in 50 minutes played. It is really hard to lose by a point per minute, but the Toronto Raptors starting lineup is doing that. There is only one lineup in the league of those 493 lineups with 50 or more minutes played. This is all per NBA.com's lineup data. There's only one lineup in basketball that's even within 10 points of the Raptors' mark of futility at 49.7 negative points per 100 possessions. That is the Blazers. They have a group of Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Tumani Kamara, Jeremy Grant, and Dwap Reith. That is a minus 47.8 in 67 minutes. Also very bad. Every other lineup of 493 that have played 50 or more minutes this season is at least 10 points better per 100 possessions in the Toronto Raptors starting lineup. Not great, Bob. This group as a collective, as we dig into some more of the sort of grim underlying numbers from this group, this as a collective, this lineup has a true shooting percentage in 50 minutes played together of 44.1%, which is lower than Ochai Agbaji's true shooting percentage as a Toronto Raptor, which is 45.2, which is extremely, extremely bad. It's the same true shooting percentage for this lineup, 44.1%, that Malachi Flynn has as a Detroit Piston. These are the levels the Toronto Raptors starting lineup has stooped to when it comes to shot making. They just are not making anything. It's, I guess there's some solace in that it's not quite as bad as the other Raptors starting lineup that it's been used in the last couple here without Immanuel Quickley, with Bruce Brown in place of Quickley, with Trent, Dick, Agbaji, and Olynyk. The Toronto Raptors have a minus 61.4 net rating. They are a minus 26 overall in 18 minutes played. So, it could be worse than the most used starting lineup. This is, of course, the lineup they're working with now until Quickley's back, which who knows when that's going to be. It's rough stuff. The starters are having no shot. So, what does all this mean, I suppose, is the place to take this next. Is this actually concerning for the big picture of the Toronto Raptors? I am of the mind that basically nothing that's happened down the last third of this season means anything at all. I guess last quarter, ever since Scottie went out, it just has not had much merit to, look into it too deeply and sort of pull conclusions. But when your numbers are that bad, it maybe warrants a bit of a closer look, a little more analysis as to whether or not this is actually kind of a concerning thing going forward. And I suppose it is somewhat concerning that this starting group is comprised largely of guys who figure to be part of the Raptors' second unit at least next season. Obviously, Quickley and Trent have been starting for the Raptors. They are, heavily involved in the rotation. You don't love that they're involved in a lineup with this just miserable set of results. You have Agbaji, who I don't know, man. It's been pretty rough go for him. We'll see how much he's in the plans next season, but he's going to be on the team. He's still on his rookie deal. I would be shocked if he's not on the team next season. He probably is going to have a shot to be an 8th or 9th guy. So that's concerning. Grady Dick, obviously, he's getting absolutely demolished in his minutes. We talked about his on-offs yesterday. They're like 20 points worse with him on the floor than when he's off over the course of the month of March. It's just the way it is. That's what happens with rookies. They're not very good. They don't drive winning, but still, he's going to be a big part of this team next season, presumably a key fixture in the second unit, along with Kelly Olynyk, who's been the anchor of these lineups, and it's not been pretty. I'm not terribly concerned that this transfers over to next season at all. And I think that's mostly because it's not like this group is going to be playing against opposing starters every night, right? This is the thing. They're getting thrown out there against the Phoenix Suns starters. They're getting thrown out there against really good teams, the Denver Nuggets starters, all of these teams they played on their West Coast trip. They're just getting thrown in there and it's like, all right, go figure it out. And, to their credit, they've had some moments where they've kind of hung tight for first halves and then lost the rope in the second half. But overall, this lineup's been an absolute mess. It's been totally destroyed. I don't think, however, that it would be the same level of extreme losing minutes next season when they're up against second units. Obviously, Scottie Barnes has been heavily involved in these second units as well. boy, oh boy, do they miss Scottie Barnes in some kind of way. We'll get into some other ways they miss him badly. It's sort of a through line of the stats we're talking about here. It's all stuff that Scottie would help out with that they're just not very good at. And so, no, is this a red flag for me? It's not. It's just the way it is. This lineup has been totally overextended, put up against very good opposing teams. And, you're going to lose when your best player is Kelly Olynyk, right? It's just kind of the way it is. Quickley obviously is a big part of things too, but he's been out. So it's a rough scene. 493 lineups, dead last of 493 lineups with 50 minutes or more. Crazy stuff. And hey, the sort of solace you find here is that the starting lineup that the Raptors should be rolling out next season, or at least some version of it, has had some real success. Quickley, Barnes, Trent, Barrett, Poeltl. That was a plus 10.3 per 100 possession lineup in 10 games together. So as bad as all this is, the parts where the team has actually been together since the trade deadline, since all the moves of Pascal Siakam, when they've had their group and they've had some actual runway to play and get instilled in the system, things have worked out all right. So while the starting lineup right now is an absolute disaster class of basketball, or sort of basketball adjacent, whatever they're playing, I don't think it's going to carry over and be something that hampers the second unit next season once these guys all sort of reassume their actual role in which they're not overextended. With that, we'll come back on the other side and get into a whole bunch of things that the Toronto Raptors are dead last in over the course of the month of March. There are 30 teams. It's hard to be last in this many things in sort of base stats, but they are. We'll get to that and talk about a little bit how it compares to the March that they endured in Tampa Bay a couple years ago, which I think we all thought it was never going to be as bad as that. Wrong you are, my friend. We'll come back and get into that in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the single best place to go play daily fantasy sports, where it's exactly the way it should be. It's you against the numbers, and it's not more complicated than that. All you're doing is picking more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, courtesy Prize Picks, and you can watch the winnings roll in. It's demon time on Prize Picks as well. You love demon time. I love demon time. It's wonderful. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. That is pretty darn sweet. You got March Madness going on. You got the NBA season winding to a close. All sorts of guys playing garbage time minutes, getting way more time than they would. The Toronto Raptors, obviously, very much here. Maybe you go find the stat projection for Jordan Nwora shots taken. You can go and do that and have it be part of your entry over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedInNBA. Use the code LockedInNBA for first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedInNBA, code LockedOnNBA. Prize Picks is wonderful. Go check them out. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, we continue on here. Your first listen of the day, digging into some pretty grim stats from the month of March that's been for the Toronto Raptors. Again, 1-9 over the course of their last 10 games. And, I guess we can begin the discussion of things the Toronto Raptors are last out of 30 teams in over the course of the month of March with the record. They are 1-9. They are the worst team in the NBA by win percentage in the month of March. Not what you want, unless you're someone who really wants to keep the 6th overall pick or have a 46% chance of keeping the 6th overall pick. Then I guess you're getting exactly what you want. But I can't imagine the level of brain worms that would make you want to watch this level of basketball we've seen. I digress. So beyond that, there's like a lot of things the Raptors are dead last in over the course of this month, and a lot of things that players on the Raptors are also dead last in. The big thing is net rating. Per 100 possessions, the Toronto Raptors are an even -14 per 100 over the course of the month of March. That is 2.3 points per 100 possessions worse than the Washington Wizards. The Washington Wizards, who I believe are starting Marvin Bagley III as their center. Not what you want. Even with this depleted roster, you would hope that better than the Wizards is attainable. Apparently, that's not the case for your Toronto Raptors right now. They're also nearly 5 points worse than the 28th place Utah Jazz, who are at about a -9.2 per 100. minus 14 per 100. Really hard to do. Impressive stuff, frankly, that the Raptors have gotten waxed this convincingly by their opponents over the course of this month. For comparison, March 2021, think back to that. We're all locked inside, extremely sad. The Raptors aren't even playing in Canada. They're down in Tampa, getting booed off their court to the point that they just stopped letting fans in the building. Freddie Gillespie is at the height of his tenure with the Raptors. Malachi Flynn is putting together a rookie of the month level performance over the course of the month of March. The entire team is racked with COVID after making a pretty spirited push to the middle of the playoff standings. Then you see a complete tumble down with Kyle Lowry getting sick and Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet all falling ill. This was a skeleton crew. This was the Khem Birch era. Oh my goodness, Khem Birch, the push shots. They have a center again. This is unbelievable. We never thought March 2021 was going to be topped in terms of ineptitude, in terms of desolation. But no, this month, much worse. The Toronto Raptors back in March 2021, when they went 1-13, that one win being a win over the Denver Nuggets somehow. But they went 1-13 that month, had a minus 7.5 net rating, outscored by 7.5 points per 100 possessions. So about twice as bad they've been this month of March 2024, minus 14 per 100. Pretty hilarious. The Raptors are also dead last in rebounding rate in the month of March, 45% even. They're getting absolutely cooked on the glass. And a big part of that is that they simply cannot rebound when Kelly Olynyk's on the floor. And Kelly Olynyk's on the floor a lot because he's kind of their best available player right now. Kelly Olynyk right now, speaking of dudes ranking last, currently ranks in the first percentile, the bottom 1% in terms of on-court defensive rebounding impact. When he is on the floor per clean the glass, the Raptors are getting absolutely pummeled on the boards, and Kelly Olynyk is the through line of a lot of very bad rebounding lineups for this Raptors team. The starting five getting absolutely crushed on the boards as well. I believe like a 43% rebounding rate for the starters that we talked about in the last segment. It's not looking good. And we'll talk about whether this is like a red flag regarding Kelly Olynyk, who the Raptors just extended for 2 years beyond this one coming up. But more stuff they're dead last in. On cleaning the glass, which isolates for garbage time and gets rid of it, throws it out. The Raptors are dead last in offensive rating at 105.1 points per 100 possessions on cleaning the glass. On NBA.com, which doesn't take out cleaning the glass, the Raptors are also dead last at offensive rating at 103.3 points per NBA.com. That means that they're not even juicing their stats in garbage time. Their garbage time lineups are also completely inept at scoring baskets, which is kind of hilarious. They're dead last in a lot, or close to the bottom in a lot of stuff. Very near the bottom in true shooting percentage, 54.1% true shooting in the month of March. That's good for third last in the NBA. They're bottom 5 in basically every rebounding category. They are just not a good basketball team right now. I'm not telling tales out of school. You know that. That's an obvious thing for me to say. But they are just getting waxed. They are not competitive right now. Less competitive than the Wizards in most departments. And so what does that mean? Is this concerning that they're this bad without their best players? Again, not really, right? Like if they had Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley, Jakob Poeltl healthy for all of these games, they would not be in this situation. Those guys on pure talent alone are going to carry you to, probably close to like an even net rating because they've been crushing it together as a starting group and they fit very well skill set wise. We know how good RJ's been. We know how good Quickley's been. We know what Barnes was doing. Jakob Poeltl ties the whole thing together. It's not going to be this bad. The real thing that I think is the sort of question here is Kelly Olynyk, right? The rebounding stuff, I think, is definitely troubling. This is something that's going to have to be something the Raptors scheme around going forward. It's pretty clear that for Olynyk lineups to have like truly viable rebounding numbers next season, they're going to have to pair him with size, guys who rebound above their station, who rebound better than their position suggests they should. Scottie Barnes, obviously a very good rebounder, averaged 8 a game this year, had moments where he would kind of just decide, all right, I'm grabbing 15 rebounds in this game, and you can't do anything about it. They're going to need a lot of that, especially if they're going to run those bench lineups with Scottie and Kelly Olynyk together. Like Scottie's going to have to be someone who really, really helps clean up the glass. They're going to have to gang rebound. They're going to have to get rebounding from their guards. Abaji's going to have to get in there and grab boards. Grady Dick, we know he's a good offensive rebounder, good instincts there. We're going to have to see him figure out that on the defensive end as well. They're just going to have to rebound above their station when Kelly Olynyk's on the floor. It's just the way it is. Kelly brings a lot of really good things to the table. I'm very glad they've extended him. I think having him as your sort of table setting big and second units is going to be really valuable. But there's a reason why I'm pretty staunch in like Jakob Poeltl needs to start ahead of Kelly, and that's because of rebounding. Like you cannot exist when you're giving up this crazy percentage of rebounding, north of 30% offensive rebounding rates. It neuters a lot of the stuff the Raptors like to do, right? Raptors like to run off of boards. We'll get to that coming up in just a second, actually, in the last segment. But Raptors love to grab and go. You can't grab and go if you're not grabbing first. And I don't think Kelly Olynyk gives those lineups a great shot of doing that. So they're going to have to figure out a way to make those lineups viable. I don't think you're going to be able to play super small with Kelly, for example. And, maybe it works with him at the 4. Maybe he rebounds better for his position at the 4 as opposed to the 5. But then you bring in all sorts of defensive questions and matchup things you got to sort through as well. So I like Kelly Olynyk. I think that the deal is perfectly fine. I think he's going to offer a ton. I think he's an amplifying player. But right now, he's just it's really tough on the rebounding side of things when he's on the floor. They're going to have to scheme around that and have a plan for that going into next season. And this, again, speaks to the need to just go find some size, find some dudes who are big, who can kind of mix it up, get in the dirt, grab some boards. That's going to be a huge thing that the Raptors got to focus on this summer. And look, the numbers for Olynyk have been pretty rough the entire month. He's not hitting his threes. He has been on the floor for some really bad lineups. They're getting absolutely waxed. We know this, but I don't think this is really anything other than the answer to the oft-pondered question, what would a team look like if Kelly Olynyk was the most important player? Thankfully, he's not the most important player on this team when it's fully intact. And so I don't think these are questions or concerns you got to worry about. But yeah, shocker. Kelly Olynyk being the best player on a team, the most important hub of offense on a team, is not going to create, wonderful results. So why context and situation and role matter. And I think in the context and role he's going to be in on this team at full strength, it's perfectly fine. But yeah, there are some things that have to be ironed out. And I do think we've learned something, that the rebounding with Kelly is always going to be a challenge, always something that has to be schemed for. And that doesn't mean you can't do it. You just work around it. Every team has its flaws and things you have to scheme around. But I think if we're looking for concrete takeaways from this month, rebounding and Kelly Olynyk, oil and water, not going so well. You got to figure out a way to make those things mix. We'll come back on the other side, close it out with a look at transition, a thing the Raptors used to be so good at. They still do it a lot, but they're not so good at actually converting. We're going to get into that coming up in just one sec, as the absence of Scottie Barnes, this might be the place where it's being felt the most over the last 3 weeks. We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. All right, today's show is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, we finish off today's show with a last look at a stat of ineptitude, depressing numbers the Raptors have posted over the course of a very depressing month of basketball. Before we dive into the last one, just a heads up, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 is your all-day streaming channel covering all the biggest stories around the sports world. Lots of incredible March Madness coverage from our folks over the Locked On College channel. Locked On College Basketball is like maybe the best college basketball podcast there is, so you should definitely go check that out. And all the local college shows covering the upsets, the surprises, the Kentucky failures. Ha 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 ha. You can go check that out over at the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 YouTube channel. Subscribe and just watch it all bloody day, huh? All right, let's get to it. My last sort of stat of note, a thing the Raptors are really, really not doing so hot in the month of March, has to do with a thing that usually they're very, very good at, and that is transition. In particular, transition off of steals, live ball turnovers. Right now, this number floored me. The Toronto Raptors are actually costing themselves points on off steal attempts in transition. Yes, they are costing themselves points per clean the glass. The Toronto Raptors are negative 0.1 points per 100 possessions better. So a tenth of a point worse in transition when they're coming off steals. They're taking away points. It's points added per 100 is the number we're looking at here, per clean the glass. There's sort of metric for overall transition efficiency. And their points added over the course of 100 possessions in transition off of steals particularly is a minus 0.1. They are costing themselves points, I guess 1 point per 1,000 possessions, but still they're costing themselves in the negative when they get a steal and try to score in transition. And this is not surprising, right? Scottie Barnes is one of the best transition players in basketball, whether as a finisher and most notably as an orchestrator, organizing things, grabbing, going, picking out the passes, finding guys filling lanes, finding shooters on the trail. Scottie Barnes is incredibly good at it. It might be the thing he's best at as an NBA player. He's a bloody fantastic transition player, and it's why the Raptors lean into transition, right? This is a team that runs a ton. And to their credit, they have maintained that identity over the course of this month. In March, they are running more than 20% of the time. 20.9% of their possessions are in transition. That is great. Like, that's what you want. The open court is where you're going to get easy looks. We know this Raptors team needs easy looks. And also, like, at full health, Barnes is an awesome transition player. We know that Immanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett have played very well in transition. Before he went out for his personal leave, Immanuel Quickley was like really kind of coming into his own as a guy who was attacking with a quickness in transition and semi-transition as well, right? Just kind of knowing he can beat guys down the floor and either spray out to shooters or just score at the rim, pick up free throws. He was really, really finding himself as a transition player before he went out of the lineup, and you hope to see him back soon. RJ Barrett was just like a ruthlessly efficient transition player, just barreling into dudes, scoring with those lefty finishes. Fantastic. And so it's nice that they've continued to uphold their transition identity, and they're doing it a ton. That's fantastic. It also speaks to, I think, the way they've maintained their identity and sort of stuck with the game plan, that they, despite all of their problems on offense, are still top 5 in assist percentage, which again, assist percentage does not equal offensive effectiveness, but they're clearly sticking with the Darko scheme of it all, which is, I think, a good thing. They're not just playing schoolyard ball out there. They're not playing prove it ball with a bunch of guys hoping to secure a next contract. Like, they're playing within the system. That's great. It speaks to Darko kind of being able to maintain some level of consistency throughout the year with the game plan, at least through all of the upheaval with the roster. It's a pretty impressive thing that they've been able to still play the way they want to play, specifically on offense. And again, they're running better than 20% of the time. That is massive. They are totally getting out whenever they want, but they're just not really scoring when they're getting it off of steals. Funnily enough, they're still very efficient, top of the league, top 2-3 when it comes to transition efficiency coming off of rebounds. But as we talked about, they're not getting many rebounds. So those possessions are like a smaller percentage. Off steals, they just cannot get anything going. And we've seen it, right? Jordan Nwora is a mess trying to orchestrate the break. He gets up the floor, panics, throws weird passes to dudes that are kind of not open for passes. Saw this a couple times against the Kings, for example. Gary Trent Jr., for all of his good things he brings to the table as a transition operator, not good. A transition wing finisher, catch and shoot threes, sure, totally fine. But if he's got the ball and he's going downhill, it's a big reason why the Raptors kind of underperformed in transition last year. Was Gary Trent Jr. was getting a ton of steals and just couldn't do a ton with them when he was out in the open court by himself. He's just not, he's not turning the corner on guys. He's not Euro stepping dudes into oblivion. He's just kind of driving head down into traffic, into extra bodies, and possessions are dying on the vine. It's just stunning to me that the thing the Raptors have done so well, both under Darko and under Nick Nurse over the last few years, is get steals and score on them. They are costing themselves a tenth of a point per 100 possessions. taking away from their overall potency, trying to score off of steals. Those live ball turnovers, the most valuable turnovers there are, they cannot convert worth a damn. And they're lucky the Charlotte Hornets are like historically terrible at transition across the board. Otherwise, the Raptors would be dead last in this stat as well. But the Hornets are like a whole nother level of truly wretched in transition. So thank you to the Hornets for that, I suppose. You know, again, this just speaks to how important Scottie Barnes is. All the stuff we talked about here today. Starting lineup. When Scottie's in there, at the very least, they're competing. They're fighting to be even. You know, they weren't a positive team when he was on the floor this year, but they were a way more close to positive team when he was on the floor versus when he's been off. They fall apart without Scottie Barnes. Transition, obviously, that's the thing he does best. He brings transition to the table. He makes it easier for everybody to score in transition. They don't have that right now. And then, you know, obviously the situation with the rebounding, like Scottie would certainly help with that as well. This is a tiny, tiny team right now. They're a small team anyway when Scottie's healthy. Without Scottie, without Yak, obviously they have no shot. But Scottie, in addition to Yak, would really, really help on the glass and kind of make it so they can turn those rebounds into the transition opportunities, the effective ones that they've been able to finish off of. It's tough, man. It's just a whole lot of pretty upsetting stats when you look at the readout from the last 3 weeks for the Raptors. Life without Scottie Barnes has been pretty miserable. And man, oh man, am I excited to watch Scottie Barnes play basketball again. Every day that goes by, I get more hopeful because, hey, we're one day closer to seeing Scottie Barnes play for the Toronto Raptors once again, hopefully come the spring training camp in September, October. Fingers crossed. We'll leave it there. Hopefully I didn't depress you too much. It's fun. It's funny. None of this is like all that serious. It's not meaning anything really for the most part. It's just like fun to laugh and point at some really bad numbers, I think. Maybe I depressed you. Maybe you feel completely, concerned and full of dread about where this team is headed because of what's happened this month. If that's the case, I'm sorry for putting you in that spot going into the weekend, but I do hope you found this to be a little bit therapeutic, just to sort of get it out there, acknowledge, ooh, this is really bad, but it's not going to always be this bad. It can't be this bad. This is like historically bad stuff we've seen. More historically bad than Tampa, March 2021. Crazy. Either way, thank you so much for tuning into the show, for rocking with it all week. I know it's not the most exciting of times to be with the Toronto Raptors, but I'm glad to be here every day with you. I'll still keep on watching these games so you don't have to. I'll still be here to break it all down for you. More draft stuff coming up, obviously, too. The March Madness continues on, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you for all of that. Look forward to more stuff next week on that topic, and we will send you off into the weekend. Enjoy Raptors Thunder tonight. We'll talk to you again on Monday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. In the meantime, follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, all of that good stuff. Love you very much. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.